We go to the phones, and GOP political strategist, co-founder, MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Chad. Good morning. I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing well. Appreciate you coming on the show today. Let's start off with Hillary Clinton. She, of course, testified last week, and it was the popular opinion that she did not hurt herself during her testimony in the hearing on Benghazi last week. What did you take away from last week's events?
Yeah, I think from a broad perspective, she didn't hurt herself. I think that, narrowly speaking, there's a couple discrepancies that I think, are problematic. Whether, anyone's going to try to hold her accountable or not, I generally think it's probably not going to be a big problem. I mean, she obviously knew the night of the attack that it was an Al-Qaeda type organization. She told her daughter that in an email. She told the Egyptian prime minister that in a phone call. But, a couple days later, she told, two family members of those killed that, that they thought it was because of a video, and that they were going to find whoever made the video and bring them to justice. And so I think she's open to an attack that says, look, you told foreign leaders and your daughter the truth, but you lied to the family members of those killed. Why? Apart from that, I think, again, she doesn't have a great answer on the security question. You had something like 600 requests for more security in Libya. And she said, well, they didn't reach me. They went to the security professionals. They decided against it. I just think as a leader, that's a bureaucratic response, and I just think it's kind of ridiculous. But look, from a theater standpoint, from a performance standpoint, she was very calm and kind of in control, and didn't have kind of a YouTube moment. So from that standpoint, she got out of the Benghazi hearings unscathed, I think, for the most part.
Another deal with the Democrats out there. Joe Biden deciding not to run for president even before Hillary Clinton testified, which I thought was sort of odd. I thought that he may have wanted to wait just to see if she did have a collapse during her testimony. But Joe Biden not running for president. Long-term legacy-wise, is that the right move for Joe Biden?
Yeah, it probably is. I mean, you should never, in most cases, you shouldn't run for an office if you can't win. Particularly someone at his age, he's in his early 70s. He's got a great legacy. He's at the top. He's in the history books. I mean, the only way he was going to be able to win is if Hillary just really fell apart, and it seems increasingly likely she's not going to fall apart. So I'm surprised. I still thought there was a slightly better chance than not he would run. It sounds like, he was literally back and forth in the last, few days. Basically just made a decision that morning. He just didn't think there was enough time to be successful, and announced it that day. So I think he probably made the right decision. But look, if Hillary does fall apart, or if Bernie Sanders wins Iowa and New Hampshire, I think he's going to be kicking himself.
Is there any way that, and maybe this is just me hoping, but is there any way that Elizabeth Warren jumps into this thing and completely throws off Hillary Clinton?
No, I really think that's highly unlikely. First of all, Bernie Sanders is doing everything she would be doing for the most part. Delivering the message, particularly as it relates to the banks, putting Glass-Steagall back in place, breaking up the big banks. And he's, raising huge amounts of money from small donors around the country. He has more individual donors than any candidate ever. At this point, I think he's got over 600,000 individual donors. It's getting to, if it was too late for Joe Biden, it's probably too late for Elizabeth Warren. She's really not shown any interest. Doesn't seem to be sort of a political animal. Doesn't really want to run. Doesn't want to run against Hillary. I just think it's extremely unlikely at this point.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak, a GOP political strategist. Less than 100 days to the Iowa caucus. Donald Trump has led for more than 100 days in the Republican primary. And you start to see all these articles now that are coming out saying that, well, yeah, it's in a better chance now that Donald Trump actually gets the GOP nomination, though he may be trailing in Iowa right now. What do you peg Donald Trump's chances at of getting the Republican nomination?
Yeah, from my standpoint, the chances of him being the nominee are unacceptably high. I mean, I would have said there was probably no chance. I think there is a chance now. I think it might even be as high as 25%. Just because, he has shown such strength for so long, and you also just don't know how much money he's going to spend of his own. And so far, he's spent hardly any money of his own, only a couple $1 million. The question is going to be, is he really going to spend $25, $50, $75, $100 million on television ads? I don't think he's going to win Iowa. I think Ben Carson or perhaps Ted Cruz will win Iowa. But, in all those state polls, he's still in very strong position in New Hampshire and South Carolina. I mean, we're talking, 15 or 20 percentage point leads. So at the end of the day, I remain pretty confident that the anti-Trump vote will consolidate behind someone and that vote is larger than the Trump vote. But, this thing is pretty unpredictable. And as you said, he's been the national polling leader for a very long time now. And so he's been much more consistent and durable in terms of his polling strength than anyone thought he would be.
What is happening with Jeb Bush and his campaign? And do you think he's done? I know he's raised a lot of money, but his campaign just seems to be spiraling out of control.
It does. I think the odds of Jeb being the nominee are very low. I think they're lower than Trump at this point. I think that the best case scenario for Jeb is that this becomes a Trump becomes a strong front runner, and the party freaks out and says, we have to back Jeb. He's the only one that can stop Trump. If he were to win New Hampshire, Jeb were to win New Hampshire, if Trump won Iowa and Jeb won New Hampshire, we could have a 1-to-1 head-to-head matchup pretty quickly. But even in New Hampshire, he's in 5th or 6th place. He's now having to cut staff. He's fundraising slowed down. He's just not catching hold at all anywhere. He's not having any success anywhere. And I think ultimately primaries are about developing enthusiasm, and he's had a very tough time creating enthusiasm anywhere, except for among major donors.
Before we let you go, Matt, thoughts real quick on Paul Ryan becoming the next speaker?
Yeah, I'm generally pretty excited about it. He's someone who has a lot of ideas. He's very thoughtful. He's committed to advancing conservatism, and he wants to take on the really big challenges, the deficit, the debt, the entitlements. He wants to reform taxes. I think he's going to be much more optimistic and much more positive and solutions-focused than Boehner was. Boehner was more of a sort of inside player, whereas I think Ryan's going to be more of a consensus builder and a communicator. So, I'm generally pretty encouraged about it, but he's got a very tough job, certainly, for the next year and a half.
Matt, what can folks find on your website, mustreadtexas.com?
Yeah, two things I'll point out. One, I've got my Austin American Statesman column this morning on the revenue estimate being downgraded by Comptroller Glenn Hager and sort of that process. And then secondly, Peggy Fekak has a column in the San Antonio Express News about how George W. Bush's critical comments of Ted Cruz might be a political gift to him. You can find those things and also news and opinion from around the state at mustreadtexas.com. All
right. As always, Matt, appreciate your time.
Have a good week. Take care.
You too. It's Matt Mackowiak. Follow him on Twitter at Matt Mackowiak.